Welcome back again. This is Josh.
And this is Matt.
And this is the call to the Brewman's Bottle.
The call to the Brewman's Bottle.
So we're a little bit late. We had a storm on the night that we had the time to record, and things got really intense. The power started to go out once, and the thunder was literally like at least once every 2 minutes. There was a huge thunderclap that would have totally decimated any chance at recording that anybody would want to sit down and listen to. So we're here. It's Wednesday afternoon. It's definitely a late recording, but as the saying goes, better late than never, and it's good to be sitting back down with you guys. We promised an E3 episode wrap-up, and so that's pretty much what this episode's going to be. If we have any time at the end, we definitely have more nerd culture topics to get down on for you. So we're just going to start it off with some talk about some more of the games that were released at E3, because it's been over for going on a week now, and there was just some of the best stuff of any E3 that I've watched in the past few years. So it's definitely worth diving into and talking about a little bit more of this content that we can look forward to in the rest of 2015 and 2016. So to start everything off, Matt, there's a game that we haven't really talked that much about on the podcast, but we've known about for a little while. It had a video at the last E3. So why don't you go ahead and tell me a little bit more about what we could expect from The Division coming up?
All right, guys. I've got a lot of info, so I'm just going to dump it out. Let's get through it together. Tom Clancy's The Division. First off, it's using what's called the Snowdrop engine. It was a game engine that's developed by Ubisoft specifically for this game. It gives dynamic illumination, great grainy detail on very small items, and it works intelligently instead of with brute force, which is really cool. This game is an open-world multiplayer RPG. It's based in a world that was devastated by a deadly pathogen that has racked most of the globe. This game is specifically set in New York City. The map size is a little bit bigger than GTA 5, so the people out there that know how big this game is, let's go ahead and take in how big that is, plus the fact that there are no vehicles. So you will be traversing all of this on foot.
Yeah, that's huge. And some of the accuracy that you've told me about is really interesting as well.
It's almost street by street, all of Brooklyn.
That's intense. And to think that it's going to be just torn asunder, no vehicles, just street by street with all these different factions they're telling us about it. It sounds like an awesome game.
So you won't take missions like a classic or basic RPG that we are used to. One person will not give you a mission, nor will there be acts. Instead, the full map of New York or Brooklyn will contain all of your objectives, almost like Skyrim.
So you'll just be going through the map, just if it's like Skyrim, and things are just going to start happening. A building will have this certain encounter in it or that encounter in it.
Right, or specific NPC that might be important to some vast network of missions that you go through.
Now, aside from the missions, one of the things I was really excited about was just the open world aspect of this, almost like a MMO, to where you've got a server that it's not just you. So what about that? Tell me a little bit about how large this game actually is when it comes to the community.
The servers are going to be based on 50 to 100 people. And what that means, guys, is not only can you use your skills in character, but you can influence other people in their game. You can help them or you control them. It's all depending on what you want to do.
That just sounds so awesome to me, to be running around on a huge map with a bunch of other people, maybe your friends, maybe some people you've never met before. It throws me to that thought process that I had when I was playing DayZ, which I think most people that started playing DayZ have kind of fallen off of it at this point, and all of us, I think, want to go back as it continues to improve. But anyways, just the idea that there are other people out there that may be a benevolent figure in your game, or they may be the enemy. You don't know.
Now, how people influence your game and vice versa also reaches to your tablet, an iOS system. Even people that are not playing the game can jump on their tablet and they can influence your game, which gives the ability for even more people to constantly be changing each other and how they play. And speaking of DayZ, Josh, this is a hardcore survival game. When you wake up, the belongings that you carry include just 3 days of food, water, and supplies. After that, you have to scavenge for everything.
I loved that aspect in DayZ, that it was player versus environment for real. Like, it was seriously survival. You could die without encountering an enemy. And before we jump off of the server and everything like that, I did hear a little bit of hearsay up at the local gaming store the other day that was talking about there might be just like a PvP area that isn't, you're going through the game, so maybe not in every single part of the game will it be that somebody can run up and just grief you, which I thought had some pros and cons in its own right. And being that the game's in development, I think that they have plenty of time to work it out, that there are areas where you can be attacked and influenced by other people, and then there are other areas where it is you just going out into the world. I think that that's a good route to take. Otherwise, you might end up like in DayZ, where I know it didn't matter who I saw. It took a lot to get me to trust anyone.
Yeah, the player versus player on that game is very paramount, and sometimes you don't get the long end of the stick.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes it's an absolutely horrid experience, and the life of your character is very short and sad.
So let's go even deeper into the game. The skill trees are extremely vast. On top of how many numerous guns and different types of ammo you can use, there's a almost limitless amount of possibility out there. Now, while you're playing, you can do a mulligan on your skill tree progress at any time, and you can also switch to custom-built classes with the touch of a button.
Well, that's pretty neat. I didn't know anything about that.
That's, I think, the end of my rant on The Division. Josh, I know this is a huge game for you, and you'll be the best at explaining this. Let's talk about Star Wars Battlefront.
Okay, this is a game that just really took me in E3 this year, and it's because I've wanted this game for so long. When I was a kid and I was in high school, I played the first 2 Star Wars Battlefront games, and I'm just a Star Wars junkie. We've talked about it previously on the podcast, and it's just one of my favorite universes to play games in, to watch movies in, so on and so forth. So this is a game, when it came to Star Wars Battlefront as a game that I've played before, I loved both editions of it, and I just, with all the new abilities of games in general in the modern day, this one was one that I feel like there are so many games that have come out that they could pull into Battlefront and use these different aspects of other games like Battlefield or something like that to just make Star Wars Battlefront even more immersive than it already was when it pulled you into these huge battles from the Star Wars mythos. Now, what we could see in the E3 coverage was just that whatever engine it is, and I didn't really hear much about it, that they're using to make this game, it's beautiful. And the environment that you're in seems very destructible. It seems like all the big things that you expect when it comes to big laser explosions and things like that from Star Wars battles are going to be in there. And another thing that it brings in is the fighter pilot combat. Now, in Star Wars Battlefront 2, they brought in one of the best dogfight scenarios in any game that I have played since, I would think, Rogue Squadron on the N64. And it seems like they're bringing it in even better in this one, to where, like in the Battlefield games, where you might have somebody jumping in a jet and flying over the battlefield and affecting it in that way, they're going to bring that element into Star Wars Battlefront, where you've got the big walkers fighting on Hoth, which was the video that they released this year at E3, that it just makes it awesome for the Star Wars feel. And then one thing that I've always liked about Battlefront that I haven't seen in many other games is the way that the better your team is doing, you bring in the heroes and you can play the Jedi. And it seems like they're going to bring that into this one. And it's going to make it a whole lot of fun.
So, how many players per game are there?
There's going to be 40 players in a match, but there's also going to be kind of similar to Titanfall, and it's always been something that's been in Star Wars Battlefront. There's going to be the NPC grunts that are also in the matches that are affecting things so that, you get the feel of being that really awesome soldier, but there's other really awesome soldiers on the other team too. You're just going to be cleaving through minions to get to them, or they're going to be amongst the minions in the battlements. They said they did a lot of testing on what the best number would be for the matches, because in Battlefield, 64 is the number of players per match that you get. And they felt like 40 was just the right number with the grunts that are running around, whereas the 64 players in a Battlefield match, that's all the men in that match. Whereas I think that's a little bit more Star Wars-esque as well, because I think there are quite a lot. You have to give the illusion that there are quite a lot more people on the battlefield, whereas you can't have the hundreds of players in on a server that were actually at the Battle of Hoth.
So, you mentioned Rogue Squadron, a game that I really love to play. Explain the dog battles.
The dog
and
fights,
how they've improved.
The dog fights seem like they've improved, and I hope that they have battles like they did in the other ones where it's only in space and you're amongst the big freight ships and stuff. And the way that the old Battlefront had it was where the space combat happened in a completely separate battle. And what this one looks like they've updated is that the space combat and the fighter pilot combat is going to be in the land battles, because there was also ground combat in the space battles where you could jump off the ship, where you could fly onto the other players.
Low altitude versus high altitude dogfights.
Exactly. The dogfights in the old game were only in space. So now there's going to be the low altitude fighting, and I mean, they didn't show it, but I can only expect that there's going to be the outer space combat, freighter versus freighter type thing that was in the old games. And it's going to be beautiful with the engine that they've got in this new Star Wars. So that's pretty much all I could find about Star Wars. They've really been just pushing information at us with E3 this year. So sifting through all of it and all of my excitement as well, just watching all the fireworks go off in the trailers and so on and so forth. But after Battlefront, man, we got to see a little bit of the videos from the new Gears of War, Gears 4. And I know Gears strikes home with you like no other, and you were playing in high school in the competitive days and so on and so forth. So go ahead and break that one down a little bit for us, Matt.
Gears of War 4, guys. All right, I'm real picky with my Gears game. I'm so picky that I got a tattoo. The first one was the best, period. I know it had a lot of lag issues, but the way it was set up, the way it was gritty, the way it was dark, it's everything that I believe that Gears of War needed. It also had a 2-player system, and that's what Gears of War 4 brings back. We don't have a 4-player system anymore. It's a 2-player co-op, which is what is great about Gears. So the reason why that is, to me, is 2 people only, requires a type of cooperative fighting that brings Gears of War home to me. When you have 4 players, you have too many ways of bashing down the enemy. With 2 players and only NPCs, it's just you and the other guy. Another game called Army of Two did it really well, if anyone has ever played that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I felt like Gears of War had that co-op game feel to it, to where part of the game was sitting there next to your friend playing, or having them in your headset and you having to communicate with each other. And I completely agree that taking it to 4 players, it really just felt like you were taking 2 players down one path and 2 players down another path, and just making it easy mode. And I feel like, I think there was another game, was it Resident Evil 6 or 5? One of the Resident Evils had that feel to it as well.
Yeah, I think it was Resident Evil 5, where one person
where they were in Africa and all of that.
That's it. Yep.
So that game had a real awesome co-op feel to it. And I bring that game up because I feel like Gears of War is going back to almost a horror game, like a sci-fi jump out at you horror style game. And this particular Gears of War, like you said, throws back to the darkness and the grittiness of it. And new characters in this Gears of War really make me smile. I felt like the old Gears of War characters, while they were awesome, felt almost played out by the end of the third one.
I completely agree. They started focusing on their storylines, which is cool because it can bring in a different element or a deeper element to the background of the game. But they became show stars more than they were actually part of the story.
Absolutely, and I felt like that it was good for them to bring in new characters because at that point they were being bound to what they had already done with the older characters. But anyways, what else do you have about this new Gears of War?
The lighting and environmental effects are over the top. You watch the video with me, you can even see just the edges of the lightning bolt when it's really close. I mean, it's spectacular. The trees move very fluid, and fluidity definitely is impacted on this game, and that shows in the combat. In past combat, let's say if you grappled up with someone, it was you're grappled with them, then you do an attack, then you do it to the next enemy. In this one, it's almost instantaneous. It doesn't really stop the combat around you at all. You're affected by numerous enemies as well. You can be sawing one enemy in half, and as soon as that's happening, another enemy's jumping on you and dragging you back to the ground, which is showed in the video.
I really like that it seems like they're going to be able to really amplify the fluidity of their cover system and the way that you're moving through combat, just like you're saying. I think Gears of War is a title that is known for that, the seamless movement through combat. And it's what makes it a fun game, in my opinion, and it's what makes its multiplayer so unique. And I feel like this one, it just looked seamless. I didn't have the controller in my hand, so I can't really say. But whoever it was that was playing definitely knew their way around what was going on to make it look like a Gears of War game should, where you're just bouncing around the battlefield, just a big old ball of hurt.
Another cool thing about this game is that both characters are wearing COG armor. To bring the people in that don't really know the story, at the end of the last Gears, the COG Coalition, they're done. So this game really stresses, are these characters before Gears 3? Or are they on a different planet? There's also 2 moons, which is very interesting.
Definitely.
Also, to wrap this up, I want to point out that the Ultimate Edition will cost $40. It includes the early beta access to the actual game, and it's scheduled for spring 2016.
Awesome. I'm really looking forward to this game.
So the next big game that we should talk about, and you should introduce, is Mass Effect.
All right, Mass Effect is yet again one of those games that goes way, way back for me. I've said it in the past that my brother's not the biggest RPG gamer, but this is one of those games that is just, I really just feel like it's BioWare's crowning achievement. One of the things that I've always liked about Mass Effect in particular is that you're playing a character that's voiced. It's a storyline that's put out there for you in almost like a pick-your-own-adventure book, which is really refreshing when compared to games like The Elder Scrolls. It's a storytelling technique that really just makes it feel like you're playing through something extremely epic. But we're not talking about just Mass Effect in general. We're talking about Mass Effect Andromeda, which is going to be something I think that's just going to blow everybody out of the water, because I know myself, along with a bunch of other people, were really disappointed at the end of Mass Effect. With this one, you're not going to be playing Commander Shepard, which means that you're going to have a whole new plethora of story to go on. It's quite possibly not going to have much to do with the conflict between the Reavers as it did in the past. Another thing that seems really, really cool about Mass Effect Andromeda is that it seems to be moving toward a much more exploratory system, which is something that's just been prevalent throughout all of E3 this year. This idea that exploration and manipulation of the world is paramount, and it's what makes games fun. And I'm not going to say it's the only thing that makes games fun, but it's definitely an awesome element. You know what I'm saying? Definitely, Matt, because of your interest in Minecraft and so on, which is all of this exploratory element in gaming.
I really like that, and I'm glad you pointed out Minecraft. Minecraft is the adventure game when it comes down to it, even though it looks the way it is. But regardless, games like this, like No Man's Sky, it makes me real happy that we can start creating games that have an actual universe. When we say universe in previous games, we use that lightly. This is definitely a universe game, and that's exciting.
Well, one of the things that Mass Effect has always had was just your ability to go and visit other planets and interact with the solar system. And I think with a game like this, moving toward this exploratory element is just going to make it that much more interesting to go out and visit these different places and so on and so forth. And another thing that I thought was really cool that they were talking about with this Mass Effect is that it could well link to your old saves just like a lot of the other Mass Effects, even though it's a new main character and it's a new conflict. And I really enjoy that, even though all of my old saves on Mass Effect are long, long gone.
So what kind of customization can you do on the characters? Is it of course, it's going to be as in-depth as the other ones. Is there anything different?
Well, it hadn't really let you know that much. I do know that when it comes to Mass Effect in general, you've always been Commander Shepard, who can be a male or a female, and you can go through this whole ordeal as that person. But there's not too much that it goes into being able to change when you think about other games giving you a whole huge line of customization. It does hint in some of these videos that the old skill trees and everything are coming back and all of that type of thing. But it just, all that I thought was really, really interesting from what I could find was that it seems to be immersing you in the world differently. And that just seems to be extremely interesting. It's scheduled to release at the end of 2016, but when it comes to games like this and they're just now being talked about, you know what to expect there. So that's pretty much all the information on the newest release that I've had on Mass Effect. Moving on from that just a little bit, I know that I've been a Halo hater for a real long time. And I'm not going to say that I just dislike all the Halo games, but when it comes to my interest in Halo in the past, I've just never been a huge Halo fan. I didn't even come in on Halo really until Halo 3. And I haven't kept up with it a whole lot as we've moved on. So, Matt, I think you're the best person to really give us an insight into the release of Halo 5.
Halo 5, guys, if you haven't gone and watched the gameplay video yet, go and do it immediately. Especially for people that don't like Halo. Josh, halfway through the video, was happy and content with the game. It looks like any other Halo could deliver. It's an over-the-top storyline with fantastic visuals. Except this time they have really outdone themselves. Not only will you get all the nostalgia of you did in previous Halos, but the story arc is where I'm at. Right now, there's a huge delegation in the storyline where humans and aliens are going to sign the first and supposedly last peace treaty between them, so they can finally start rebuilding the galaxy. When this delegation is assassinated publicly, they blame the Chief. The true story about it is Chief and Blue Team, which had gone rogue after getting their last mission, trying to just continuously fight against the corrupt aliens and humans. The Chief showed up to save the delegations, and he actually did save some of them. Sadly, there were a lot of civilians that were caught in the crossfire, so he was blamed. And that's where Halo 5 starts. You are part of a super team that is going to 5 John 117, the Master Chief.
So it really does seem like a pretty awesome continuation of a story that I felt like didn't get very interesting until the end. But the gameplay is what really caught my eye. I feel like Halo gameplay has been something that really didn't get fun until it evolved into something bigger. And most of the people who are really big fans of Halo completely disagree with me. But that's just my opinion, and that's how I feel. And I feel like this Halo is going even further when it comes to the gameplay of just the run and gun that they have that is Halo, as well as just the way that the environments in Halo and the different things that you can do and jumping around with the low gravity. They've just made it awesome to be a part of this world.
So not only does the game look fluid, and the fighting is more pronounced, not to mention there are new melee options, grenades, weapons, what have you.
Oh man, they showed some cool new weapons in the trailer.
I really like the crossbow, dude.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
The multiplayer beta will begin on December 29th. Don't forget that, guys, if you want to get the beta. So let's move on to the actual gameplay. I'm going to go ahead and give you a twist that I hope would even intrigue you more to play this game, is that multiplayer will be based on a skill ranking system. There's a skill-based ranking system in Halo now, which means that your character will have skills, will have options. You will build this guy from the ashes into something that you want to play in a first-person shooter, period.
So is that kind of like a Modern Warfare feel where you're picking perks and stuff like that, or is it more of like a skill tree feel, or did they even release enough?
They just say it was a skill-based ranking system. That's all they've said. You can go ahead and just flip a coin because it's probably be 50-50. Yeah. Regardless, it will be in-depth. Not to mention that your CSR, your competitive skill rating, will be a division-based system where players are rated into 7 different tiers of skill level.
I always like being able to track my status like that, where it's like, this is the bracket that I'm in. And a lot of games in the past, it seems to have done that in the background. And I like that a lot more games now, especially just for an example, the new Dota engine that's going to be coming out, where they're really letting you get down and see the numbers that put you where you are when you're matched up against other people.
So when you're placed in a division online, you'll get that by playing a couple of games. These matches will roughly determine, where you need to be placed. If you lose against, let's say, gold level players, but you are winning against bronze level players, you will automatically be placed in what we would call the silver level. So you don't have to start at the bottom of the hill. If you're a good first-person shooter, you can jump somewhere in between.
That's pretty cool.
So the CSR system is so in-depth that the first 5 divisions are also divided into 3 tiers, and the final 2 are completely separate. There's a top 200 leaderboard, of course, and everything will be based off of leveling: iron, bronze, silver, gold, diamond, and of course masters.
I really like how it seems like more and more games are making this push toward this competitive level. It makes things more interesting to watch and play.
And we haven't even seen really the multiplayer. Of course, there's been a couple of videos out, but that's early stuff. The gameplay, I actually was happy about when it comes to the story, because most of the time I don't care about the story. I just would rather read the book, or I would rather have someone tell me about the campaign, but I've always done it as multiplayer, and this one has definitely grasped me on the actual story itself.
Heck yeah, man.
So, Josh, you ranted a little bit the other day about how certain games should go and how there is a line that we should start following so we can evolve in gaming itself. What was your thoughts on Metroid?
So, yeah, I kind of went on a tirade with this one. It was something that, Metroid goes way, way back with so many people, including myself. And when you hear that there's going to be a new Metroid game coming out, I know that it just really gets me going, and I really want to see what they're going to do. Metroid games are always so interesting on so many different levels when it comes to it being a shooter of sorts and a puzzle game. It's just awesome, and it was my first exposure to the female main character, and I think it's why I like the female main character so much. But anyway, so they were talking about a new Metroid coming out, and what they have released is just something that I think we all should take note of and understand that this is the type of thing that I think could very well just ruin a title for people. And it's Metroid Prime Federation Force. Now, I understand that this is a handheld game, and sometimes when it comes to a handheld game, it's not the same thing as getting the full game, but Metroid is not like that, and they've never done this with Metroid in the past. And when I heard about a new Metroid game, I'm sitting here and I'm hearing about the new Fallout, and I'm hearing about Star Wars Battlefront, and we've got even other new games that are coming out with this new Hitman and how crazy open world it's going to be. And I'm thinking, what could they possibly be doing with Metroid? And they do what's basically a mini game. And it really, it was like, Nintendo, you can pull your knife out of my back at any time. I really think it's high time for us to get a new Metroid that is on the same caliber with some of these other games and give us some of this story. And the universe that Metroid is in, to me, it's always seemed so dark and just crazy. And it seems like they could just make such an awesome game out of that. And I feel like it's just a wasted attempt. And it's really just lackluster at best when you think about this Federation Force. And I wanted to take the time because, I mean, we've been just pouring out positivity with this E3 coverage. And, I mean, it wasn't all good this year. And I really felt like Nintendo dropped the ball in comparison when it comes to that particular title. The next game we're going to talk about is something that we've all been chopping at the bit for when it comes to being tabletop players. I know Matt's going to be really excited to get his hands on something like this because he's the resident DM for all the D&D excursions that we have. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about this Sword Coast Legends that they released some info on? And this is a Wizards of the Coast developed game, mind you.
Yeah, it's... Wow. All I can say is tabletop players, get this game, period. It's based in Forgotten Realms. It's in Faerun. It's called Sword Coast Legends, and it offers, like any other tabletop, in-depth magic system. You have 5 different playable races on top of 6 playable classes. You can build your own character from the bottom up, like any other D&D game, except this one can be a 5-person game. Yes, right. I said it. That's 4 people and 1 DM. Now, of course, you don't require the DM, but if someone like me that really loves to DM and doesn't really feel like playing another RPG that's set in a fantasy world, even though Dungeons & Dragons is my favorite, I'm allowed to jump into your game at any time while you're playing and interact immediately, or I could build my own custom. And this really gives everyone in the party that's used to sitting around the table the ability to not only do their tabletop, but in their off time they can jump on their computer and anyone can be the DM, which would give various options, you know, new dungeons, new stories, the reasons why we play these kind of games.
Now, Matt, did you ever get a chance to mess around with the Neverwinter Nights tool set?
Yes.
Stuff like this, I feel like it hasn't really been flirted with since the Neverwinter Nights tool set. Now, there have been the different electronic versions that we've talked about previously in the podcast that I feel like have been neat, but this, as you said, it's got spell effects. It's got dungeons. It's the typical top-down perspective that you think of with D&D. And it just seems like it's going to be giving us the opportunity to play a D&D video game. Seriously, the Dungeons & Dragons experience in a video game. And I think that's totally awesome. And I bring up the Neverwinter Nights tool set because just like in that tool set, you could set up anything. Zone after zone after zone after zone of completely original content built with a world builder tool. And this game's going to have that for you, as well as a pre-built campaign in what I think is one of the most interesting parts of the Sword Coast, or parts of the Forgotten Realms, the Sword Coast.
And these guys really put their back into the work itself. You know, if you're someone that's got at least something to play on that's new age or a computer in some capacity, you can play this game. This game is on Mac, it's on PC, it's on Linux, it's on PS4 and Xbox One.
Wow, I didn't know it was just a flat-out full release. I was honestly expecting this to be like a Steam thing. That's awesome.
It is on Steam for the PS4 specifically.
Oh, and it is on Steam.
Oh, and it is on Steam, yes. They did a Twitch Thursday of Sword Coast Legends. I have not watched it personally, but it looks pretty good. I might check it out. You guys should check it out as well. But anyways, they brought this to the table at E3. I'm really excited. I know you are too, Josh, and of course the people that we're going to tell about in our actual D&D group on Sunday should be pretty excited about it as well.
Heck yeah. And can you find any release date information over there?
It's coming in 2015, that's all it says.
So in 2015, I bet you this is going to be one of those Christmas
Good old
games.
Christmas present.
Yeah, I bet it is. A lot of these have been Christmas games, and I'm not mad at all.
So that's really the spill I have on that game.
I'm so excited about it.
Me too. Josh is going to go ahead and explain a game that he played, and of course I watched almost the entirety of it over his shoulder, and it was good watching it. Probably even better when you're playing it, the new South Park RPG.
All right, now, just to start it off, I can't stress enough how fun the Stick of Truth was. That game was fun to watch. It was like watching a South Park episode that you were running around in with light RPG elements that were engaging enough to keep you going even after it got kind of grindy and feeling like you're not really doing much. And it was funny. That's the biggest thing about these games is they're hilarious. They're some of the funniest games I've ever played because it's the South Park producers putting all their wit and edge into everything that they do, and these games are just meticulously done by these guys with throwbacks and new jokes, and it's just... Like I said, it's just like playing an episode of South Park. It's like you're running around in South Park. It's so much fun. Now, the new one is called South Park: The Fractured But Whole, or The Fractured Butthole. I don't know how. I don't know what cadence.
They did that joke just for someone like us to
I don't
say
know
it.
what cadence you're supposed to use on that when people can't see your face. But anyways, it's going from the fantasy RPG to a superhero style game, which the superheroes from South Park just I'm already smiling. It's so funny. And it seems like they're doing it just like they did. So if nothing else, I just want to point people at these two games. I'm going to buy The Fractured But Whole. And I know I'm probably going to install the Stick of Truth over again and play it through one more time. And it just... I don't know, man. I don't have much more to say other than these games are hilarious and a whole lot of fun. If I want anything out of the new one, it's that maybe they make it a little bit more in-depth for the real RPG players like myself so that we have a little bit more to get down on with the game.
So for the people out there that don't really know, or maybe people that have played Paper Mario, kind of go over the turn-based system that really gets you into the RPG element of this game.
Well, it was a turn-based system, and man, now that we're sitting here in front of the mics, I can't tell you at all what the name of the game that it was like, but it was Lost Odyssey. Yeah, that's it, where it's a turn-based system, except when you're in the middle of your attack, some of your attacks have trigger buttons to press in the middle of the attack to make them more strong. And that's basically how your character defines itself from a basic NPC of the same class. And so you're sitting there and you're like, use your attack ability, Big Slash. And you use Big Slash, but if you press triangle in the middle of Big Slash, then Big Slash becomes Big Double Slash. You know, and then he does 2 hits instead of just 1. It's that type of experience. So it's an active turn-based system where you're constantly pressing buttons instead of just waiting. I really enjoyed that, but it was also kind of real-time to where if you just sat there and just let the monster do whatever, you're on your timer and the monster's on his. So if you give him time to just go through his timer repeatedly, eventually he's going to beat you to death. And so it's a participation-intensive turn-based system. That's about all I've got for South Park: The Fractured Butthole. And so now this is a game that I didn't play, and I still haven't even touched whatsoever, but you said you played the first one and that this new edition looked really, really cool. What about Mirror's Edge?
All right, guys. For people that have played Mirror's Edge before, this is like Mirror's Edge on steroids completely. Mirror's Edge Catalyst brings a pure hand-to-hand combat open world system to give you a little dip in what the story is. Basically, you're a runner You have tattoos of grid systems of this super metropolis that you're running through, and you're transversing items and information to people. And there's this big brother aspect to it of this ultimate world government that can just come down on you, but you don't believe in guns, and you're a kung fu master. So in the first one, you could really interact with the combat system. You could, fight these people, take their gun, knock them down, move them out of the way. But in this one, your mind, the hands, and the controller are all supposed to be completely fluid. And the options in combat are almost limitless when it comes to your combinations of how do you take away his gun, how do you break his arm, do you use him as a body shield, do you sweep his legs, do you snap his neck, do you cartwheel or pinwheel around him to attack someone else. And this is all in first person, and your eyes and your body move as if you were doing it. So it really gives you the roller coaster feeling at the same time of this mind-blowing visuals.
Wow, I did not know it was the entire game was in first person. That kind of changes my entire view of it. But one of the things that I felt like during the release of this game they were putting a lot of focus on that's worthy of note is that they've really gone in and removed your ability to not free run in this game. Like, they're pretty much every movement, everything that you're doing, you're free running. You're jumping off walls, you're climbing up and down shit. It's just, it seems like they have just put a lot of time taking it from what they made it sound like you couldn't do in the old game and making it something you can do in this new edition.
Now, in the old game, you kind of had like you were running a trial. Your levels and missions and places that you would go were set in. And as you said, that's changed. There are no load screens anymore. It is completely open world, guys. And like Josh said, the environment is totally interactive, everything that you can interact with. Not to mention, it also brings out the nostalgia of the first game. When you're not doing this main mission, you can roam around and still do your races and try to beat times with people on how fast or what kind of options they found to get from point A to point B. And also all the little mini games that you had in the first one in between. So it really brings in a interactive online community.
More of this persistent world or open world feel that it seems like all games are going for, that it is awesome to me. Makes the gaming landscape for me right now.
So we're going to continue blowing your minds. The next game we should talk about, which if you have not played one of these games, I am sorry. Josh, tell us about Fable.
All right, so I'll go ahead and say in the beginning of this is not the Fable I was expecting. But then again, Fable is notorious for being that company that tells you all about what they're about to bring you and then just kind of gives you only a small piece of what they said. A lot of times these guys will go out and just tell you about how their new game is going to be so expansive and there's going to be so much interaction that you're going to be able to have. And with this one, they were talking about how you're going to be able to bring your friends in. And so much made you think, oh, we getting the Fable MMO experience. And it doesn't have to be the Fable MMO, but just the open world with your friends experience that Fable could be. No, you're not getting it. You're not getting it this time. And I'm going to sit there and say, I don't know that you're going to get it ever. But that being said, this new one looks like a lot of fun. Don't you agree?
Yeah, dude. As long as they keep enriching me with these in-depth stories that Fable has always given. They've always given you the traditional hero, the Fable hero. I mean, the folk hero, it is what it is.
You can go either direction, be the extreme good guy or the horrible, horrible bad guy. Well, in this one, what they're giving us is much more reminiscent to like the Evolve game. And I know you're like, what, Josh?
Yeah, please explain that real quick.
The fact is, this is going to be a 4 versus 1 experience, just like Evolve is the group versus 1. Now, this is the way they've put it out is that it's going to be, you get to pick your class, and there's a tank, there's a rogue, there's like a sorcerer, spellcaster type deal, and then these people are going to be going along their quests, and you're going to be doing the third-person Fable thing, and then the villain is going to be another player that has a top-down view of it, and he's going to be throwing monsters in at you for certain situations, traps in to change the whole element of the quest you might be going on at the time. And it seems like it's going to be almost lobby-based gameplay, which is a crazy jump from Fable, but Fable's done crazier jumps in the past with their whole horse and carriage game that they put out that I'm not even going to give the grace of time on the podcast. It's just, in my opinion, it's an insult to your audience when you take your game and you just completely derail it from what it has been and give us something like that. I mean, I don't know if you've heard of anybody that played it. I've never even heard anybody that said it was fun or anything, good or bad, that even tried it out. But anyways, so let's just hope that this iteration that looks like it's going to be pretty fun and set in the Fable world, and they're going to be able to give us a little bit of story from one side and so on and so forth, isn't going to be just a complete letdown, because I feel like Fable is one of those games that really could have even jumped on board even more from what they have in the past to be in that open world game. They were one of the forerunners at once for the open world, influence it in your own way style game. And I mean, I feel like it's high time they put that out again, because that's what I want when I go for Fable. And while this might be fun and worthy of interest and picking up and awesome, I think everyone can agree in unison that it's time for a real Fable game. So that's about it for our E3 coverage when it comes to the games that we thought you guys would want to hear about, the things that really caught our attention. So without going into too much more, because we've been going on for a little over 50 minutes now, I think we'll take just the end of the podcast. And Matt, I want to know from you the ins and outs of which game was your favorite this year in E3 and why.
Okay, so if we both had to pick a game, and just one game, I would have to go ahead and say Fallout 4, and I'll give you the simple and sweet of it as much as I can. Ever since I was little, I was a huge post-apocalyptic fan. I read The Stand at an early age. The Stand came on in a 4-part series. I couldn't get enough, and if you guys haven't seen that, that's, of course, Stephen King. But that really gave me the end of the world scenario, and the people that are left behind, being left behind after something that humanity as a whole was supposed to be wiped out as. You're not humanity anymore, you're human beings, and it's a different social structure and a different strife in all itself. It's breathtaking, and Fallout 4, and including the entire Fallout series, even though it is gimmicky in some spots, it gives the darkness and the light that sheds through that I really enjoy when it comes down to a game where I'm scraping and surviving.
Now, when it comes to the games that we've been playing, I would say since long before we started recording the podcast up to now, why does this one stand out for you as this E3's your game that you're looking forward to from a player's perspective rather than just a wide-eyed child like you just described?
From a player's perspective, Fallout 3 was amazing. New Vegas was great as well. Skyrim came out, and this entire time, Fallout 4 has been being worked on. It is going to be over the top. It's going to be the game that's going to be played for 5 or 6 years. It's going to be great.
Yeah, so you're looking forward to spending hours in the different crafting systems and the different alleyways and avenues that are going to be in this game because of Bethesda's track record.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, dude, they make the perfect post-apocalyptic open world.
I completely agree, and I would have to agree with you, as you said in the beginning before going on your spiel at all, that if we both had to pick a game together, Fallout 4 would be that game.
What would be your top game, Josh?
I would have to say that for all the same reasons that you would say Fallout is your game, and it just goes so far back with you and all of that wonderful, gushy stuff, it's the same thing that makes me pick Star Wars Battlefront as my game of E3 this year. It's just seems like this is the game that is going to fulfill everything that I've expected from it. So that's why I'm going to put it at the top of my list. I mean, because really my list is so long. You've got the Final Fantasy VII remake that's coming out. You've got Square Enix is putting out so many throwback games to what all of us old head RPG lovers like. But this one, I think, is just really going to fit all the gaps that I've wanted from Star Wars Battlefront 2 on. It's going to bring in the elements that we've learned that we love from the Battlefield games. It's going to bring in the elements that you really liked from the old Battlefront game, where you can play as a Jedi, you can be your favorite hero, or you can be the unnamed hero on the battlefield that killed the most men and then just took care of business. To me, that one right there is just like I said, the developers are fulfilling everything that we all, I believe, have wanted from the game. I believe doing the best job of being a new release and filling the shoes that a new release has to fill. So that about does it for this episode, guys. Next week, we'll definitely be coming back at our regular time with our regular style of content. We won't be doing full episodes of video games. If there are any of you out there who are just like, God, these guys are just rambling on about all their expectations of video games. Well, it's that time of year with E3. So expect it again next year, and any time that something like this goes down where there's some huge coverage of a video game or multiple video games that we like, we're going to dedicate the time to it. But know that next week we're going to get back down to talking about some of the things that have happened in the time that we've been covering E3, like the finale of Game of Thrones. I don't know about you, Matt, but I've been really trying to reintroduce myself into comics. Well, I do know about you. You've definitely been doing that. But we'll come back with all that content that we know you guys love, and then we've been harping on it every episode. But guys, I've got some solid evidence in my hand that we're making progress toward having a website up that you can come and download our content without having to worry about streaming and using up all your data or watching the video on YouTube and using up all your battery. It's really happening. It'll come right to your phone, and it's going to be awesome. So until next week, guys, as always, this has been Josh.
And this is Matt.
And this has been the Call to the Brewman's Bottle.